Welcome to the VS Criminal Defense Attorneys podcast, providing an informative resource on criminal law with a specific focus on sex crimes. From protecting yourself from false accusations to understanding the exact boundaries of the law, being informed is always the best first line of defense. This podcast series is reviewed and approved by attorney Michelle Villanueva-Scura.
In this episode, we want to provide an insightful understanding of Arizona Proposition 313 and what it means for those accused of sex trafficking crimes. On November 5, 2024, the state of Arizona voted on whether or not those accused of child sex trafficking should face mandatory prison for life with no possibility of parole. The measure was called Proposition 313, and it required a majority to pass. Prior to Proposition 313, individuals accused of sex trafficking minors could face varying amounts of time in prison depending on the victim's age, and there was no mandatory life sentence. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, hundreds of child trafficking cases happen each year in Arizona, and many people, including many law enforcement, thought there should be stricter penalties for child sex trafficking. When the votes were counted in November of 2024, Proposition 313 passed with an astounding 65% of the voters advocating for the new lifetime mandatory sentence. This measure has serious ramifications if you are facing accusations for child sex trafficking, even if it was an undercover sting where a police officer was posing as a child. Clients charged with child sex trafficking now face a lifetime in prison, which is why it is essential to reach out to a skilled sex crimes lawyer. First, let's go over what defines child sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking is designated as a Class 2 felony in Arizona. It is defined as knowingly causing a minor to engage in prostitution or any other sexually explicit activity. The activity includes knowingly doing the following actions: causing a minor to engage in prostitution, to allow a minor in your custody to engage in prostitution, or to use a child for prostitution, gaining a benefit for putting a minor in charge of another for the purpose of prostitution, financing, controlling, or being involved in any way in prostitution involving a minor, transporting or paying for transport of a minor with the intent of prostitution, providing a way for a minor to engage in prostitution, enticing, recruiting, or harboring a minor for the purposes of prostitution, and engaging in prostitution with a minor under the age of 18. On the other hand, it is possible to be falsely accused of this crime for several reasons, such as if your actions were misinterpreted, if someone falsely accused you maliciously, or if you were mistakenly identified as the perpetrator. Whether you were falsely accused or not, a sex crimes lawyer can help you create a strong defense in order to be exonerated or to have certain penalties reduced. This is especially crucial now that Proposition 313, which ushers in lifetime prison, is in place. Now, let's review the penalties for child sex trafficking, before and after Proposition 313. Prior to Proposition 313, the penalties for child sex trafficking varied based on the circumstances and included the following. For victims who were 15 years old or older, the perpetrator was required to spend a minimum of 10 years in prison. And, if the victim was under 15 years old, the minimum sentence increased to 13 years. Prior to November 5, 2024, those accused of child sex trafficking could face life imprisonment, but it was not always the case, and probation was still an option, depending on circumstances and judicial discretion. Now that Proposition 313 is in place, the penalties are governed by mandatory life sentences. Today, anyone who is accused of Class 2 felony, child sex trafficking, faces a mandatory lifetime sentence with no possibility of parole. Proposition 313 has stripped the prosecutors and judges of the ability to use their discretion when negotiating and imposing sentences. Next, let's explore some effective defenses that can be used for child sex trafficking accusations after Proposition 313. While Proposition 313 does not allow for any flexibility in penalties for those accused of child sex trafficking, many of the legal defenses can still apply. To establish and assert these legal defenses, it is absolutely essential to have an experienced sex crimes lawyer in Arizona working on your case. These defenses will require careful strategy, compelling evidence, and meticulous investigation. The legal defenses for child sex trafficking often include the following: lack of intent or knowledge. There must be proof that the accused knowingly engaged in the activity. it is possible to show that they were unaware of the age of the minor or that the minor was being exploited. Mistaken identity. If the accused was misidentified, especially if the case relies on witness testimony or circumstantial evidence, this strong defense can be employed. False accusations. In some cases, the accuser may have ulterior motives, or maybe there was a misunderstanding, and therefore a false accusation.
Entrapment. Law enforcement has been known to induce individuals to commit a crime they otherwise would not have committed. Lack of evidence. A sex crimes lawyer can challenge how much evidence the prosecution has and whether or not it is admissible. This defense can lead to reduced charges or even dismissal.
Age misrepresentation. In certain circumstances, the accused may have been misled as to how old the minor truly was, creating a defense. Constitutional violations. Evidence used by the court must be obtained lawfully, and if it is not done lawfully, such as through an illegal search and seizure, then the evidence can be suppressed. And coercion or duress. Coercion can be a defense if the accused was forced or threatened to participate in trafficking activities. Remember, if you have doubts about the new Arizona Proposition 313 or have been accused of child trafficking, VS criminal defense attorneys will represent defendants against serious sex crime charges to protect your rights. Being accused of a sex crime can lead to serious consequences, and the introduction of Proposition 313 has made the penalties for child sex trafficking life-altering. Whether you are falsely accused or not, our Phoenix sex crimes lawyers at VS Criminal Defense have the experience necessary to defend your case to ensure your rights and freedoms are protected. Don't wait to hire a lawyer. Reach out to our law firm today to get started with a consultation. Call us at 480-923-9001 or visit us online at vsattorney.com.
Thank you for listening to the VS Criminal Defense Attorneys podcast. VS Criminal Defense Attorneys are focused on offering clients personalized service and aggressive representation. Our attorneys are passionate about individual rights, government accountability, and personal freedom. No matter what you are charged with, our criminal defense attorneys will be there to guide you. Call today to schedule your strategy session. It is time to fight back.